We are already halfway through 2025, so to discuss how TAG sees the year panning out thus far, regarding the projections made at the beginning of the year, regulatory events, and thoughts on the remaining months of 2025, I've once again invited TAG CEO Dr. David Acheson to join me, your host Lisa Lupo, to discuss his thoughts. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Lisa. Good to chat with you.
So, as we started 2025, we spoke about some key areas of 2024 and their carryover to the new year, including occurrence of some high-profile, high-brand food outbreaks, concern among consumers about the safety of the food supply, and the entrance of RFK leading Health and Human Services, which oversees FDA. We also delved into some HHS focus on ultra-processed foods, additives, and GRAS evaluations. So let's take a look at how these played out in the first half of 2025. So, David, one of the strongest assertions you made and have reiterated is that 2025 would be a year of change. So with that being fairly obvious that was well prophesied, what do you see as the most significant change thus far this year?
It is a year of change, or it is a year of proposed change, perhaps we should say. I think much of the predictions that we had at the beginning of the year, Lisa, are playing out. Obviously, since the beginning of the year predictions, we had the MAHA report that came out. Some surprises in that, perhaps, in that some of the heavy focus on chemical residues, heavy metals that were being discussed, food colors at the beginning of the year really weren't prominent in the MAHA report. It was, from a food perspective, it was much more focused on ultra-processed foods. That really was front and center, and the major focus of it. So that was essentially a report that spoke of, here's an area in which we need to focus. Maybe that's because the Health and Human Services and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kennedy, had already talked about, well, we're going to focus on chemicals, we're going to focus on GRAS, we're going to focus on colors. And that train had, quote, already left the station, and it already was a focus, and it already was moving forward. And we should come back to that in a minute and see where those things have gone. But it's almost like the switch over mid-year-ish, month or two ago, was to ultra-processed foods as a focus, but without saying, what does that mean? What's that going to look like? What might change for the food industry? And it was no mention of where you take it, other than, well, this is causing a problem, at least in the eyes of those that wrote the report, and we need to do something about it. But that something was totally up in the air. So I think the message to the food industry there is, ultra-processed foods, however they are defined, and that definition is all over the map. It isn't clearly defined. It's as loose as, if you have an ingredient in your product that you don't typically have on your kitchen shelf, then it's an ultra-processed food. I mean, it can be incredibly broad, or it could be defined quite narrowly, and it's unclear which way they're going to go, other than there's something out there about that. Not a surprise, but it is there front and center. Now let's go back and look at the predictions around colors. Well, absolutely, they've moved in the direction that we thought they would. It's like every big manufacturer, every small manufacturer that uses an artificial color is looking at, how do we get these out of our products? And some of the big players, the big multinationals, have made very public statements about, we're going to remove colors from foods, and they're going down that road. I mean, they've committed to do it. They will do it. It's on that trajectory. I think they've been thinking about this for a long time as sort of where it's going to go. So it's just like, oh, we've got to pull the trigger on making it happen. Now, there's costs associated with that. And I think that's probably what has held companies back from doing it before. Is like there's expense. They haven't been pushed to do it. Consumers haven't rebelled, so they haven't done it. Now they're doing it, and it's on that pathway. we predicted grass would be a focus, and it is. Although it's other than the requirement for the FDA to review the grass process, particularly I think for self-affirmation.
Mhm.
So far, we haven't seen anything come out about, well, what does that look like? Is self-affirmation going to be illegal? Um, I don't know whether they'll go that far or they'll put it on a timeline to say that everything has got to go through some sort of FDA, what's the right word? Look, Bec-
Okay.
because it isn't really an approval process right now. Is that going to change for RAS approvals that are sent to the FDA, or are they going to be required to put eyes on everything? It's unclear, other
Mhm.
than it's an area of focus. When we get to chemicals, just recently the agency has moved forward on that, and they've put about, well, here's a list of the things that we need to consider if they're going to put us on our. We need to review this list. Now that doesn't mean they've started to review chemicals that they're concerned about. But they have laid out at least a draft or a document in which they're requesting industry input and well,
Right.
actually input from everybody around here are the criteria that we need to think about as we create our prioritized list for reviewing chemicals. Now that's just the beginning of the process. It doesn't say they have reviewed the chemicals. It doesn't say any chemicals are going to get banned that are not currently allowed. So where that's going to go is I think a good ways off ultimately, but the
Okay.
process has begun. Um, and I think one thing that has happened that I didn't see coming, or we didn't predict, was a reemergence of the suggestion of user fees for the food industry.
Oh, right.
That wasn't something that we talked about, and
Yeah.
but it's popped up as, do we need to have user fees? Now, obviously, all of this focus on ultra processed and residues, chemicals of all sorts, cost money. On the one hand,
Mhm.
we've cut budget, we've cut people, people have left. Institution knowledge at FDA has gone away. So how are we going to pay for all of this new review that's going to be needed? Once we've established the process of what needs to be reviewed and how do we review it, it's got to be reviewed, and that requires appropriately trained individuals to do. So how are we going to pay for that? And it's either
Right.
appropriated dollars or it's make the industry pay. And now there's a proposal to make the industry pay. That's not going to go over well. I remember well actually, and I'm wrapping the clock back a lot of years here, a couple of decades perhaps, where this came up before, and it didn't go well then. And there was massive pushback from the industry on user fees. It was felt to be impractical to implement, and it fizzled and went away.
Mm.
If you push me into a which way is this one to go, I would predict it'll go the same way. I think
Okay.
user fees for the food industry is so complicated. Um, what do you charge a company that has an annual revenue of $500,000 for user fees versus a company that has $150 billion? I mean, how do you apportion that? How do you make it fair? And it was just unbelievably complicated. And I think it sank under its own administrative weight. And I don't think those problems have gone away. So, but it's out there um,
Right. Right.
as a factor. Now, the other one, the last one we should probably talk about of predictions was heavy metals. Um,
Yes.
I thought they would get a more focus than they have. People are not talking about them the way that they were a couple of years ago. Um, the Closer to Zero program, as far as I know, is continuing on its pathway. And clearly, anybody who's putting product into commerce needs to pay attention to the new Appendix 1.
Hmm.
That's not that came out in January 2024, so that's now 18 months old. But it is absolutely, that's the guardrail to be looking at. FDA uses it, FDA looks at it and holds companies accountable to that list of like risks that they need to think about. And there is more focus on heavy metals in that than there was in the original version from 2018. So
Okay.
that's sort of where I think we largely got our predictions right. Progress is slow. Um,
Yeah.
we haven't seen explosive changes. but we've seen a clear commitment to move down this pathway with perhaps more focus on ultra processed, as I said earlier, than I anticipated. But it's there.
So with a lot of that being in proposal stage and question
Mhm.
stage and industry comment stage,
Right, right.
what has there been a major impact at this point from HHS or RFK or
No,
okay,
I mean, I think the biggest impact is the colors. I mean, if we're
okay,
looking at
right.
what has changed and what is industry in the process of changing, it's that.
And
Uh,
even that at this point is voluntary.
it is, it is. I don't see it staying that way,
Right.
um, but it is,
Okay.
and companies have seen the writing on the wall and they know it's going to go down that road, so let's just bite the
Get
bullet
going.
and do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and but I think there are companies that are looking at the cost of that change. Small companies that use colors, and
Mm-hmm.
they're sort of saying, well, this is going to cost me a lot of money to do this because these artificial colors are cheaper than the natural ones. And if I make this change, it isn't going to change my product. I'm not required to do it, so let's just wait and see. I think there's an element of that which I understand
Right.
because
Mm-hmm.
there is cost associated with some of these changes. But yeah, I think that's the one that's probably moved the furthest, but on a voluntary basis, as you said.
Okay. So if we jump back to, the food outbreaks and recalls that were seemingly significant in 2024 and affected consumer confidence, where do you see that currently lying?
Well, the good news is we haven't seen a high brand profile outbreak um, in the last 6 months, at least not one that I can recall, that had the same
Yeah.
impact as some of the ones from 2024. Um, I think, what does that mean? Does that mean, and that's an open-ended question that I will try to
Hmm.
answer. I've posed the question and I'll see if I can answer it. Um, I think one of my concerns is, and this is a sort of a very much a subjective observation, is that I've seen situations in the last 6 months where I think a year ago, FDA would have behaved differently than they are today.
Mm.
These are not egregious situations. These are not situations where I think public health is seriously at risk. But it's almost like industry has got to pass. They've got to buy in areas where I would have expected the FDA to take stronger action on pushing companies, requiring companies to pull product off the shelves that the agency didn't follow through on. I've seen a couple of those,
Mm.
um, which perhaps means that we haven't seen the high profile large recalls that we did before because FDA are not pushing them quite as hard as they were. Now that's me being speculative. It's I don't but given that the agency has lost and is losing key people,
Right.
you can kind of not it's not surprising. Um, and I think we might have predicted or discussed the fact or the risk that with less public health officials at state level and at federal level, their clusters of cases are going to be bigger before they get recognized.
Okay.
Um, and what worries me perhaps is that are we missing things? I don't know. If you miss them, how you don't know, do you? It's just, it's a hole.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, how do you measure something that hasn't happened or doesn't appear to have happened?
Yeah.
Um, but it's definitely a bit of a concern that I've got in the back of my mind is this just it's just the natural cycle of outbreaks and recalls. You go through
Yeah.
periods where you have some high profile, very, very big ones that cause a lot of trouble. And then you go through phases where you don't see that. It's just the natural cycle of events over all the decades I've been doing this. You see that happen, and maybe we're just in one of those, or maybe some of these. cuts have had are impactful in that space, and we're not picking things up that we otherwise would have. I don't know the answer to that,
Yeah.
but
But consumer confidence seems to just kind of be,
same, neutral.
yeah, we're not really seeing much from
Nope.
anyone on it right now. Maybe just kind of a wait and see attitude or,
You're not seeing a lot of consumer concern around food safety
mm-mm,
that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. And I think that those cycles do get driven when you have a very high profile outbreak. It hits the headlines, it hits people see it on social media, they talk about it. And that, not surprisingly, reduces confidence in the safety of the food supply.
right.
Rightly or wrongly, it's just the way it is. We haven't seen those, so one could surmise that confidence right now is pretty good because everything looks like it's going just fine. Um, and so it seems to be just chugging along without a sort of a polar swing one way or the other. Um,
Okay.
Nor have we seen a large outbreak that we're aware of that has sort
Right.
of remained unanswered. We've seen outbreaks, yeah, but not perhaps the high profile ones that get everybody on edge.
Yeah. So how do you see the rest of the year playing out? Are there other new areas of regulation or consumer concern that the industry should be aware of?
Well, I think we've seen the first 6 months set us up for the areas of focus, define those chemicals that we're going to go after, perhaps move forward on regs around grass or requirements or guidance for self-affirmation. Um, where's things going to go on ultra processed foods? Increased focus on that, perhaps. Um, I think the first 6 months started out with a bang and a lot of noise. We're now in well, we've got to follow through and actually sort of do the grunt work and begin to create, well, which of the chemicals we're going to look at. Um, that takes time. You define the list, then you've got to look at the risk, then you've got to make decisions based on that risk about what you're going to do about it. Are you going to issue guidance? Are you going to ban it? Whatever the it may be. Um, I think the next 6 months are going to be watching the machine work. I don't see massive new areas of focus. We kind of know what those are, and now they've got to churn through it and quote deliver. Um, I don't have high hopes that we're going to see a lot of deliverables by December 31st. I just see the machine working its way through these complexities. Um, and from an industry perspective, keep watching this space because you might get a
Okay.
curveball and be ready for it. I think that's key. It's like, I don't know, somebody could just blow something up and we'll get a curveball and a slew of regs. It's pretty opaque at this point to see exactly where it's going. I think one other comment that we didn't discuss in the first part of this was we haven't really talked about the Food Safety Inspection Service and where that's going.
Oh, right.
Um, and I think we should. I mean, as I think all our listeners will recall if they're in this space that the salmonella regs kind of got put on hold around poultry. So that can's been kicked down the road. And I say kicked down the road because I think ultimately it'll come back.
Okay.
I think it'll cycle back in. It's in some form or another, but for now it's sort of gone passive. Um, it seems like on the Food Safety Inspection Service side of things, there's just been some recent announcements around a new administrator, a new deputy administrator. We don't yet have an undersecretary for food safety, but rumors are that's in the works. So I'd see that coming together. But I don't see the FSIS side of the world, the meat, poultry, and egg products, changing a whole lot. And they haven't changed much in the last 6 months. I don't see them changing a whole lot in the next 6 months either. They seem to sort of just do their thing. Nor have I seen anything, a prediction. Are we going to see serious proposal for a single food safety agency merge in the next six
Right.
months? Um, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see that in a way that's got any more traction than the last 25 efforts to do that. Um, I, it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Um, so yes, it's a year of change. I think now or 6 months of change. A lot of things have been
Right.
floated up there. I think we're into 6 months of well, let's see how this consolidates. Let's see how this moves forward into concrete change,
Hmm.
without a whole bunch of new ideas emerging. I think I think all those are on the table, and it's like, okay, which ones are we going to execute on and how? I think that's where the next 6 months is going to go. So hopefully we got a bit of peace and quiet. Um,
Yes.
but I, I think a key thing to remember there is we are still seeing regulatory actions. We're still seeing 483s. We're still seeing warning letters. In many ways, the agency is biting down hard on those that aren't following the rules. Um, and so I think it's key that we maintain all those areas of focus and don't let things slide at all. Um, and keep watching where the next bump in the road may be that we could trip
Okay.
over.
Yeah. It seems like a really good assessment of the first 6 months. And like you said, maybe it'll be a little bit quiet here and now things will just gradually roll out. Um, it'll be interesting to come back in December, January and see how it all played out. And we'll talk again and get your
A-
perspectives then.
Absolutely. Keep in mind, it's entirely speculative. It's like
Right, right.
I don't have RFK's roadmap. He doesn't call me and sort of say, here's where I'm going to go, David, and then I can share it with everybody. But
Darn.
it's like you do your best to try to read the tea leaves and predict. And I think, from a viewer and an industry perspective, do stay on your toes. As we have seen, this administration can pivot and change in a matter of minutes. And you can think you're going down one pathway, and all of a sudden there's change. We haven't talked
Right,
about the tariffs, but
right,
they've been impactful, and they do keep changing. I mean,
yeah,
it's like it's awfully difficult to plan other than plan for the unexpected.
right. Okay. Well, maybe we'll have a whole nother discussion on tariffs, but I just, that's
Right.
a whole different
Right.
ballgame.
Yeah.
So, but I would like to thank you again for sharing your perspectives and trying to read the tea leaves, as murky as they are, and what we can expect maybe as the year continues to roll out. And I would like to thank our audience, as always, for listening in. And to ensure you don't miss any episodes of Tag Talks Food Safety, be sure to like, follow, or subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or whatever your favorite podcast platform is. Thanks again, David.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.